All right, greeting everyone. Um, Today I am so excited to have with us Annabelle Huang, CEO and co-founder of Altius Lab. Hi, Annabelle.
Hi, how are you guys?
We are doing great over here. Excited to have you joining us again this year. Can you give our audience a quick introduction of who you are, what Altius in maybe 30 seconds? Because then we're going to go into more details later.
Of course, and happy to be back here again. My name is Annabelle Huang, as you mentioned, co-founder and CEO of Altius. We are building a VM-agnostic modular execution layer that abstracts high-performance execution part of the blockchain stack to enable the next level performance for any blockchain. And prior to Altius Labs, I was one of the managing partner at Amber. Before that, I was part of the AirSwap team building very early stage DEXs.
Hmm. So that's a lot to unpack, but we will unpack all of that during this session. So the first thing you were saying is that you are building an execution layer, and I can't help but notice that you didn't say a blockchain, right? I thought everyone would be building blockchains, but you're building an execution layer. We have heard of data layer, we have heard of consensus layer, we have heard of execution layer, but you're building execution layer as a service and not a blockchain. So what are the key differences here?
That's a great question. So instead of building another general purpose blockchain, whether it's L1 or L2, we chose a more technically complex route to abstract the execution layer from the consensus layer itself and to bring optimization at the execution layer directly. The thesis here is really one, I don't think we need more general purpose chains. I believe in a multi-chain future where we'll see more purpose-built chains, almost like different apps on your phone within the App Store. And we want to build something useful that can empower the next generation of the multi-chain future by bringing our expertise in the distributed systems and high performance computing into developing execution layer that's compatible with any chains. Um, and like you said, modularity is not a new concept. But if you look at the blockchain stack closely, we have execution, we have data availability, we have consensus, and then finally settlement. Before, we'll have monolithic chains that have most of these functions coupled together. And we're seeing newer and more modern chains that have decoupled DA layer, decoupled consensus and execution. And you can choose to settle on any chain or maybe settle to multiple chains. So we're really trying to push the frontier of the next layer of modularity at the execution level.
Mhm. So let's talk about the benefits of doing so first. If we think about blockchain that want to go fast, we typically think about something like Solana, right? Monolithic approach, trying to go really fast. What you're saying here last year and also in other places is that Altius would bring Web2 level performance without sacrificing decentralization. So what kind of performance are we talking about here? Are we comparing to Solana? Are we comparing to Visa? Are we comparing to like Twitter? What level of performance are we aiming for? And to say that you can do that without sacrificing decentralization seems like you are challenging the blockchain scaling trilemma, right? So blockchain trilemma for our audience, you can pick two out of three, basically. You can be fast, you can be secure, or you can be decentralized. And in the past, like people typically choose to sacrifice decentralization for security and speed. But Altius, of course, is trying to do all three at the same time. So basically, how fast can you get? And how do you circumvent the trilemma?
Yeah, so in terms of how fast we can get, in terms of where Ethereum is at and in the EVM side, or where Solana is at, and in SVM, or even a lot of the move-based chains are at in MoveVM. I would say every generation of the chains that come to the market, the VM itself or the architecture itself has been improved, of course, especially versus the TPS that even Bitcoin can do, right? But what we're doing is actually introducing optimizations um, on top of any of the existing VMs. So we're not redoing a new VM per se, with a new language that will be difficult to onboard developers, but we're just bringing optimization to each existing VM. So for how fast it can be, we can enable Solana level or even faster than Solana level performance in terms of throughput, in terms of latency to existing EVM chains by introducing parallel execution or multi-threading at the EVM level, as well as more optimized state management or database management. Um, and similar optimizations can be applied to even SVM or MoveVM, even though they already have some sort of parallel execution um, baked in at the VM level. And to your point, the second question, decentralization. Again, since we're not um, building our own blockchain, we're only tackling it at the execution level, so we can at least ensure the decentralization of the smart contract execution. What I mean is that there are different blockchains that achieve high performance by running very specialized or very performant sequencer or validator itself. Think a really beefy high SSD machine, and you can achieve performance by running everything, putting everything in memory at this one machine, or having a couple co-located machines to run these together. But again, then you don't really have a decentralized validator or sequencer set. Um, what we're introducing is a sharded database architecture, um, what we call scalable database to tackle in between the database and execution. So when you're executing a smart contract, when you read and write into the database or Merkle tree in Ethereum's case, um, we applied the sharded architecture so that the high performance execution can be run on commodity hardware, meaning things that you can get anywhere off the shelf, say spin up a very standard AWS node without having to find or pay for very expensive and specialized machine. And one additional benefit this brings on top of decentralization is actually addressing state bloat. So imagine a super active chain and you need to run a full node or to store everything in memory, even for the most performant or the machine with the biggest memory is still has the risk of literally running out of memory or running out of state. But with our architecture, because it's scalable via the sharded architecture, we can just simply add more machines to address the stable problem. So we are bringing high performance to any blockchain, but at the same time, also future-proofing them for performance and also for database management.
That's very exciting because, for people who have been in crypto a while, we all remember the excitement of being able to run anything on our desktop, right? Or even on our laptop back in the day, right? You can mine Bitcoin on your laptop, you can mine Ethereum on your laptop. And then I think things get progressively demanding. And now if you try to run a node of any blockchain, like good luck not using any of the hyperscaler to serve your node or your sequencer. So I find the direction that Altius or the design choices of Altius different and really refreshing. But now let's talk about the people who will be using Altius because you allow developers Sue's execution layer, right? So if you are a developer on a DeFi right now, what you do is one, you pick a blockchain, right? Maybe you pick Ethereum, maybe you pick Solana, uh, and then you study the programming language for that blockchain, and then you go and write smart contract. And now Annabelle, Altius comes in and said, no, 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 don't do that. Use Altius, and we will act as a middleware between you and the execution layer of your choosing, and we will make it better. Like, how does that change the developer's experience of doing this? Like, are they still writing Solidity on Ethereum, for example? When they deploy smart contract, is that to the EV, is that to the Ethereum, or is that to Altius? What does it look like?
Yeah, so there are different ways we interface with developers. So the more direct way would be other blockchain developers. So you're building either you're a builder of an existing chain, maintaining an existing chain, or you're building a new chain. You can work with the Altius stack, the Altius execution engine, to quickly update your existing VM. So you get the high performance and the more optimized state management almost instantly. So we can help upgrade any blockchain essentially. But if you're a smart contract developer, then parts of it relies on the chain that you're deploying to work with LTS stack. Or alternatively, um, like I mentioned, I believe in a multi-chain future. I want to make uh, it as easy as possible for app developers to launch their own customized, purpose-built blockchain themselves, while still remain as performant as Solana or any other blockchains that required a lot more expertise to build. Um, so for mature app developers who are contemplating moving to their own blockchain for different reasons, for customization that can cater better to their app, or for other reasons, they can also spin up an app chain using the Altia stack as well.
Wow, that's gonna change how people do things. Because the next question is really, really the one that exciting to me, right? So in programming, we have this thing called zero cost abstraction. So when I want to do something, regardless of how I write the code, it will get compiled out to something that is efficient, right? Altius does similar thing with parallel execution. Right? So my understanding, which is very limited, and I hope you can help me on this. If I'm a developer and I write a smart contract, right, and I hope my smart contract can be executed in parallel on Altius. Altius actually handle the parallelism management for me by looking at the bytecode of my smart contract and trying to do parallel optimization at that level. Is that how it works? And from your experience or from your benchmark, let's take something that is pretty typical, like swapping something on a text. Like how much of a speed up are we expecting if we optimizing for parallel process at the bytecode level?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So essentially, if the underlying chain is using the Altia stack, so if it's running off-the-shelf EVM, which is sequential execution, you'll be able to get parallel processing right away. So for any smart contract that is executed via the LTS engine, then yes, we will do analysis and also uh, schedule the transactions to be run in parallel. And the way that we handle parallel execution is also different than a lot of the existing methods, where you will see with C-level with SVM or block SDM within MoveVM, where the parallelism happens at the transaction level, meaning you'll look at this block of transactions, you will run them all in parallel optimistically. And when you run into conflicts, say a couple transaction is touching the same state, you know, okay, I cannot run them in parallel now because you have to determine who goes first. Then you'll go back at the transaction level and rerun the conflicted transactions, and then you get to a resolved uh, end state. But with Altius, what we implemented is what we called deterministic concurrent control plus static single analysis at the opcode level of the smart contract. So think of it as a more granular level. We're looking at every instruction within the transactions as opposed to the overall transaction themselves. So the result is that we again will run everything optimistically in parallel, but when we run into conflicts, we actually go inside every conflicted transactions and see which opcode or which line of instructions are actually touching conflicted state, and we'll only rerun those in parallel. So you can think of it as a more granular and more efficient parallel execution and conflict resolution. So you'll get additional speed up from this way. And plus, with our sharded database management, that's where we'll get a lot more speed up with the database IO, or read and write. So coupled with these two, if you think Ethereum mainnet is nowhere even, obviously nowhere close to even millions of gas per second. A lot of the leading L2s like Base and a few others, they're currently at maybe around 50 million gas per second. Their goal this year is to get to maybe 250 million gas per second. But with the Altius architecture, you can get to 1 or 2 giga-gas per second pretty instantly. And obviously, there's a lot more optimization we can continue to work on. So this is the instant performance boost we hope to bring to the various chains.
So to the audience, I did promise Annabelle at the beginning of the session that if it gets too technical, I would try to bastardize her response and give you uh, a 5-year-old version, and 5-year-old would be me in this case. So the way I think of this, which is of course not 100% correct, but might help some of our audience grasp onto this idea. I think of ride sharing, right? If two-person ask for an Uber, right, and one want to go all the way up north, but one only want to go just midway up north, other parallel process would say, hey, these two transactions are in conflict because you cannot have one car going to two destinations. Right. So therefore, only one passenger get to ride. But if you go down to the opcode or the instruction level, it's actually no conflict at all. You can have two people riding the same car. You just need to drop off one person in the middle and then continue riding to the final destination of the second passenger. So if we optimize at the actual physical instruction level, you get more optimization out of it. And of course, we do see this kind of service from a ride-sharing application. Right? I'm sure Annabelle is dying inside because that oversimplifying what it is, but that's probably give our audience a little bit of uh, an analogy of what's going on to some degree. Is that about right?
Yeah, I that's actually a good way to visualize it. Another example
Mhm.
we like to use is, remember in 2021, NFTs were super hot, and then when you're minting NFTs, you're always you have a counter. I could say you want to mint
Mhm.
100, so you have to count. Okay, I minted one. The next transaction, I have to add one. So my instruction is okay, n plus one. But because all
Mhm.
of this is touching n, so that in traditional parallel execution land, all of those are in conflict. You have to execute one by one anyway. But for us, realize that okay, if it's just the last we can run it, just rerun the last instruction within this whole transaction. So you're not really minting over and over again. Um, and all of a sudden, you're saving a lot of rerun and saving a lot of gas to rerun these. And with our sharded database, and you can say, okay, since it's all n+1, how about we shard it to 16 machines, and then they'll eventually, count to 100, and then you can just simply add them up at the end. So this is, I guess, another way to explain why it could work better in parallel this way.
Mentioning NFTs hurt my soul sometimes. I probably have too many of them.
I'm lucky because
But
I mostly had Pudgy because they're cute, and I think they're the few that held up in value.
they are doing well. Actually, Luca Ness is one of our speakers as well. So,
Amazing. We
we
have to
like we
thank
like our
him.
pudgy. Yeah. Let's step away from the architecture and the technical side of Altius, which is exciting. But I would also like to talk about the other side of Altius as well. You successfully raised 11 million in pre-seed, which is fantastic from top tier investor, Founders Fund, Pantera Capital. So for such an early stage investment at this size, to you, what does it signal about infrastructure investment in the blockchain space?
It's a great question, and I do hear a lot of the sentiment, especially this year, that we simply have too much infra, and they're not valuable, they're all vaporware. Even though some of it could be true, I still think we have a huge gap in terms of where we are and where we want to be. We're really looking at mass adoption, and Altius is playing one part of scaling that or tackling some of the interoperability part to eventually get to that end vision for what we all want, and the reason why we're all in this space building. So what we were able to the validation and the conviction we're able to receive from our investors validates that. They also believe that there is huge gap and they want to invest in teams that have the long-term vision and the patience to build for the long term to try to tackle that. So I think, obviously, given my past relationship with a lot of these investors while I was running Amber, they know that myself, the team that we have, a lot of them come from Web2 enterprises. My co-founder and CTO, he came from 20 years plus experience with 14 years specifically at high frequency trading firms, Hudson River Trading, one of the top HFT shops globally. Um, this gives our investor validation that we are here to build for the long term. We want to leverage what we've built previously in our careers to tackle a very ambitious problem, but we will not stop until we get there. So, um, a short answer to your question, there is still a lot of infrastructure gaps that we need to address, but we also need the right team with the right long-term mindset to realize that.
I find the complaint about too much investment in infrastructure baffling because that's like complaining about building too many roads and bridges. Like, which is, we probably gonna need them at some point. Might as well start building now. And to your point, like, it's not just building more; it's also building the right thing. Which brings me to the next question. Altius chose to go with modular approach, but of course, infrastructure also cover, building up new layer one, building up new layer two, building up another modular approach to something. So in your mind, since you chose modular approach, do you see it all being modular going forward, or is there a space for additional layer one and layer two as well?
I do think we will see more chains. Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, my conviction on the multi-chain world, we will see more chains, but I think we'll see an era of more purpose-built chains, meaning this is a chain that is specifically customized for trading on chain, or another chain that's customized for gaming, because we are entering an era where we'll see a lot more applications being brought on chain. and the specifications of what that's needed and the marginal um, improvements that we can see by specializing that. For example, what Hyperliquid did with its own purpose-built blockchain that really was built for the order book and for high performance um, trading on chain. So I'm sure we'll see more of that for different use cases. There's still a world for general purpose chains. Maybe Ethereum will become the settlement layer for a lot of things that will be transacted on chain. Again, it's difficult to achieve this level of decentralization of security that's battle tested over time. But will we see more general purpose blockchains that are new and coming to market? I argue that might be difficult. Um, and I do think um, people are looking for the next generation applications. And a lot of times, and rightly so, users shouldn't care about infrastructure. They shouldn't care about what chain it's on and how should I think about how to, address these cross-chain bridging aspect of things. Um, it's almost like you shouldn't care if your app is developed by Apple or Android or as long as it's easy to use. And so in that land, I do think we will see more modularity, which means more specialized offering of different, looking deep into each layer, each aspect from the application level to the blockchain level, so that we'll get to better and better performance and better UI UX at the end. And we'll see definitely a lot more purpose-built blockchains so that we'll get to that app chain future.
So speaking of people who don't want to know they're using blockchain, institutions are notorious for wanting the benefits of blockchain transaction, right? Quick, speedy, cheap, but hard to deal with the actual fact that they might have to use blockchain. Custody solution is difficult, security is difficult. Um, and you mentioned just now about the new kind of application that could happen with next generation infrastructure, such as the one you're building. Now, from institution perspective and retail perspective, with Altius, what new kind of applications that we might be able to see that wasn't possible before?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that come to mind, just given my background and our team's background in trading, especially high frequency trading, is that we'll get to a level where um, a decentralized trading infrastructure can almost compete with centralized ones. I say almost because it's always it will be difficult to have both decentralization and the level um, of performance exactly the same. But with DeFi, I think we can get to a place where it's close enough, and we'll be able to see more fully on-chain order books beyond maybe what Hyperliquid has done, and having more even maybe enterprise um, trading on chain or institutional trading on chain. They might need to have some parts being permissioned or KYC'd, but being able to customize for those use cases. So that's one. And then obviously, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm excited to see more social or entertainment or gaming related use cases to be on chain. And I think there will be probably interesting social experiments we can do in a fully on-chain world where we rely on blockchain for trust and coordination in ways that maybe we cannot do in the Web2 world or in the physical world. Um, so I'm excited to see more use cases there. And another one would be around real world assets or payments in general. We can get to the same level of speed as Visa, MasterCard. We're obviously seeing Stripe doing a lot on the stablecoin side with their acquisition with Bridge and Privy. So it's already in the works. It's happening. So we're seeing more of those being moved on chain because it is faster, because it is cheaper. Then from an infrastructure perspective, we can make sure that that could also compete with the Web 2 level speed.
Exciting wars ahead because like I was totally betting on gaming on chain to be a big thing, and it is a big thing now. But I would have thought that it would have been a lot bigger until people have to download MetaMask to play a game, and then it's all of a sudden stop being fun. But we are heading in the right direction, especially with solution like Altius coming out and speeding up the gameplay. Because like I think gaming would benefit the most from having parallel execution, right? Because like you have player in this corner of the game doing one thing, and this player in another corner of the game doing another thing that might be unrelated. So there's no reason one has to wait on the other one to finish the transaction first. Totally makes sense.
Exactly. Or payment as well, because you're mostly doing transfers from different wallet addresses and they can all be processed in parallel. So much higher gas per second or much higher
Mm,
transaction per second, much higher throughput, much lower latency, and really can be Visa level or faster.
mm. And with this, you were saying before that you believe in the multi-chain world, and Altius baked that into the design as well. You are VM agnostic, which means as a developer, I can work with any VM through Altius, right? And as a user of blockchain transaction, I can also eventually work with, I mean, do my transaction on any of the blockchains that are out there. Now, from Altius' perspective, that is quite challenging because on the one hand, you have to integrate it with all the target blockchain, right? If you have developers wanting to connect to three chains, then you have to do 3x the amount of work of one chain. And then you have the user side, which is trying to connect to all the chains because they are airdrop hunting or something. That sounds like it's a very difficult scalable problem. Just EVM and SVM alone are two different beasts, right? And to make sure that you can integrate with them in a secure and decentralized and efficient manner sounds like a very difficult thing to do. How do you approach this challenge?
Well, I should let my co-founder and CTO speak more to this because he's definitely the brain behind a lot of our architecture. But the way that the LTS framework works is we actually implement everything in Rust, but we have a interpreter layer, almost like a transpiler that could interpret the different languages. Maybe you're using Solidity, maybe you're using Rust already, or any other language uh, to transpile that into what's compatible with the rest of the LTS framework. But that brings a lot more flexibility because again, one, we're not asking developers to learn a new language because it's difficult as is. And you can deploy the same smart contract you do on Ethereum or Solana. There's no change in developer experience there, but you'll get the speed up through the underlying blockchain improvements. Um, and in terms of the scalability, actually, a lot of the computer science principle is very similar. Obviously, there's differences in the EVM opcode or semantics versus the SVM opcode set, but it's not as different as you think. It's not 100% completely different. There's still big overlap for a lot of the basic functions. We just have to expand, for example, upon what we have built for EVM to account for the different opcode sets in SVM. And then to expand to other VMs, we'll do the same. So hopefully it's one-time work, and then the rest should be very easy integration via certain API calls so that the chain itself can run a upgraded and more performant execution layer right away.
Hmm. So the reason this question really excites me is because the fragmentation of the developers in the blockchain world, right? If you, for some weird reason, you pick EVM as your first go-to development environment, then you kind of stuck there. Or if you pick SVM, you kind of stuck there. There are some people that jump around between the two environments, but that is the minority, right? And I feel like Altius would actually not like make sure everyone can work together regardless of the language that they are speaking. Kind of like you are the Tower of Babel for execution environment, and that's so cool.
That's what we hope to do.
Mhm.
And what's more exciting for us beyond upgrading, being able to upgrade the performance of different individual chains, is actually horizontal integrate our network into a shared execution layer, and where we can have the opportunity to tackle the more interoperability side of the things. So, can we achieve cross-chain interoperability at the execution layer directly instead of going through bridges or other abstraction levels that sit on top of the app? So, for us, it could be a more native, more protocol level way to tackle cross-chain interoperability or composability. And that's something that's super exciting to me because myself as individual user, while I was at Amber, when we act as solver for a lot of these cross-chain intent protocols or cross-chain swaps, it's actually still quite manual. It's still, at the end of the day, relying on someone to manage the inventory across different chains, to bridge, to underwrite the bridging costs. Um, or risks because a lot of times there are hacks that happen at that level. But through the execution layer, since we're already executing smart contracts and updating the state of the blockchains that are powered by Altius already, then maybe we can enable more native cross-chain interoperability that way.
Mhm. Now let's look ahead a little bit. One of the thing that that I am looking forward to is the open execution network vision of Altios. Like you were saying right now, if somebody want to use a new execution environment, typically it's centralized in some way. Right? If you go to L2B, it's like most of the L2 are still on, wheels, on 18 wheels. They're not fully decentralized like they are promised yet. But Altius is trying to get there and trying to get to decentralize as fast as possible with this open execution network vision. Can you tell us a little bit of like what is open execution network? How is that different from what you are doing now? Like what is the path to get there?
Right. So right now you can think of each chains will have their own set of validators or sequencers. A lot of times, like you said, it's a single sequencer. So what LTS hope to bring is through our architecture, we can bring high performance and lower cost and solution to state bloat to these chains. And they can even decentralize the set of validators or sequencers that are run. Obviously, LTS initially can be the host to run all the execution. But later on, we can decentralize that network to open access to anyone with a commodity hardware to be part of the OEN and to power the execution for the different blockchains. And there's interesting dynamics we can consider where um, sometimes maybe we'll see congestion on one chain where a few other chains may be a bit quiet. Say there's like a big NFT mint or a big airdrop to be claimed on one chain versus it's business as usual everywhere else. Um, right now, what happens is then that one chain faces congestion because it's running with its own validator set and maybe doesn't have a big overlap with the rest. By introducing LTS and OEN network, then we can consider something that's dynamic load balancing or dynamic load management, similar to what Netflix does. or AWS, right? When you have high demand in one area, you can balance the load across other machines are idle or quickly add machines so that the chain itself is not congested. So we can introduce maybe even interesting economics incentives so that we can dynamically manage the load across the execution of different chains. So we avoid running into congestion anywhere else.
So let me expand on that a little bit. So for the blockchain with current generation design, one of the bottleneck for decentralization is the consensus, right? The more validated nodes you add to the network, the slower the consensus gets. But from what you were saying, because of the deliberate design of Altius, the more people joining the OEN, the more transactions you can process, the faster it gets because you can route the transaction in a way that can be parallel, can be processed in parallel, yet have no conflict at the consensus layer. Which mean, in theory, do you have theoretical limit to the scaling, or you can just keep piling on horizontally scale out the network?
Yeah, so there's a big distinction we have to make here. So because we are only tackling execution, we don't touch consensus. But by
Mhm.
speeding up execution, because you get to your updated state faster, then you can get to consensus faster. So we are still speeding up the chain, even though consensus you still have to go through the finality, and in that sense. Um, but in modern architecture, a lot of the bottlenecks within consensus, some parts of that is where execution is. Some parts of that is when execution layer communicates with the consensus layer, or when it touches the database. So we're optimizing everything in between, anything that touches execution, and in between. But we're not touching or changing anything on the data layer, on consensus or settlement, because we wanted to remain as modular as possible. But by introducing the OEN network, it is further optimization, the load management when it comes to execution. So then we can get to consensus much faster.
So you get the execution of any transaction to be as fast as possible, and then the settlement speed or the consensus speed is up to the user to use whatever they're comfortable with.
Correct. Yes. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll get to even a new era of an era of new consensus.
Mhm.
Although what we've seen is uh, more or less, I think people are uh, comfortable with existing consensus mechanisms, but just doing more optimization either at the DA level or at the execution level, like what Altius is trying to do. But who knows? Maybe there will be more performant consensus or even more performant online data structures, and the Altius will be able to be uh, compatible with all of them. So really,
Mhm.
just pushing the limits at the execution layer.
Right. And to our audience, we're very excited to see where Altius will take them. What are we looking forward to this year and next year? What is on your roadmap? And if someone want to get involved in this new exciting technology, what are the options here?
Yes, so I would say we're still rather early in the development stage. We are coming to a beta level at our EVM implementation, our first EVM implementation. So hopefully, you guys will be hearing more from us about our first batch of design partners that will be launching in Q3. And for the rest of the year, we'll consider expanding that beyond EVM to other VMs so we can bring our technology to tackle a broader ecosystem. And finally, if you're a developer, whether you're building a blockchain, we definitely would love to chat, or if you're building an application, if you're more mature, thinking of building your own customized app chain, please do get in touch with us. If you're an early builder, we would love to chat and see what interesting use cases you're working at, and to see if there's any opportunity for us to co-build or look at work together at an earlier stage. If you're a community, broader community, please do follow us on X at Altius Labs. Go check out our website, ltslabs.xyz, to follow our speed and stay up to speed. And we also have launched an ambassador program for the broader community as well, if anyone's interested to apply. And lastly, do get in touch with any of us, with myself, anyone on the team, if you just have any interesting ideas you want to chat about.
And with that, we shall say thank you, Annabelle, for once again joining us at Redefined. Hopefully, we can invite you back next year so you can give us an update of how 2025 goes for you. And I'm sure it will be fantastic. Thank you so much,
Thank
Annabelle.
you. Thank you. Thank you, SCB 10X and Bloomberg for putting this together again.